The alien soldier didn't mean to step on the teddy bear. It just crunched under his foot, louder than any rifle shot, and that's when the child's eyes snapped open. No one moved. Not even the wind. The ruins had been silent for decades, and now the boy was staring right at them like he'd been waiting, not for help, but for revenge. The patrol had landed on a dead planet. That was the command briefing. Old Earth. Wiped clean after the atmospheric wars, uninhabited for over 70 years. Sector 9 had been marked for reconnaissance due to a flicker of thermal readings, possibly residual energy discharge or malfunctioning probes. The squad was made up of hardened Varric troopers, soldiers trained on volcanic moons and fungal ice colonies. They weren't nervous. They weren't even armed for real combat. Just suits, scans, and sarcasm. Commanding Officer Relic wasn't exactly thrilled about babysitting a ghost sector either. "We're walking through human ash for what? A warm pipe," he grumbled as they moved through collapsed structures and half-eaten skyscrapers. The world was coated in gray, a place where color had died quietly. Private Zern, the youngest of the team and the only one who still asked stupid questions, scanned a half-buried shuttle pod. "Sir, something moved. Probably your career," muttered Kelvik, the heavy lifter of the squad. He chuckled, stepping over rebar twisted like bones. But Zern wasn't joking. His visor replayed a thermal flicker. Humanoid. Small. They followed the trail down into a collapsed substation, a cavern of dust and silence. That's when they found the child. He was curled up beneath a support beam, dusty and barefoot, one hand clenched around a soot-stained teddy bear with one eye missing. At first, no one moved. No one breathed. "He's alive?" Kelvik whispered, weapon half raised. "Scan him," ordered Relic. No readings. No life signs. No tech signature. The scanner simply froze. The boy opened his eyes. It was the kind of stare that didn't belong to someone that small. It was steady. Heavy. As if he knew them. As if he recognized something in their armor that even they didn't understand. Relic stepped forward, his voice soft but clear. "Are you alone here?" The boy didn't blink. "You're not supposed to be here." A low hum rose from the floor. One of the lights in their helmets flickered. A backup oxygen tank began to hiss. Kelvik turned in a circle. "I don't like this." Zern knelt to offer water. "Hey, it's okay. We're here to help." The boy's eyes shifted to him. He flinched. The teddy bear twitched. Relic waved his hand. "Okay, no touching the kid. Just keep him calm. I'll report in." He tapped his calm nothing. Static. He tapped again. Still nothing. "Calms down," he muttered. "Get us a relay boost." Zern stood back up, his breathing shaky. "I swear he just whispered something in my head. But his lips didn't move." They all stared at the boy again. He hadn't moved an inch. Still sitting. Still calm. Suddenly, Private Rekha stumbled back. "Did anyone feel that? Like someone breathed down my neck." "There's no one behind you," Kelvik replied, but his voice lacked conviction. The boy turned slightly. Not his whole body, just his head. The motion looked mechanical. Studied. Relic took a slow step forward. "We're going to get you out of here. You've been here a long time, haven't you?" The boy looked around at the shattered ceiling above. "I never left." Zern's visor shut off. Black screen. Total failure. "System's dead," he yelped, fumbling to reboot. Kelvik's pulse monitor flatlined for a split second. Long enough to trigger a biopanic alert. "This place is cursed," he muttered. "I told you humans buried freaky stuff." A soft vibration rolled through the floor. "Above us?" Rekha asked. "No," said Relic, crouching to feel it. "Below." The boy looked down too. Then back up. He smiled. It was not a child's smile. They didn't have time to react. A support beam dropped inches behind them with a crash. Dust exploded. The hallway filled with gray. When it cleared, the boy was gone. Where is he? Relic barked. He was right there! Zern shouted, eyes wide with panic. A faint giggle echoed through the ruins. It didn't bounce like a sound. It traveled straight into their helmets. Relic pulled his squad back into formation. Secure the perimeter. Weapons live. I want visual on that child now. They split into two search pairs, cautiously navigating the dead corridors. Zern kept muttering. It wasn't just his voice, it was inside. Like it belonged to all of us. Like we've heard it before but forgot. Kelvik found a fresh footprint in the dust. Barefoot. Small. Human. I think he wants us to follow, he said grimly. Rekka tapped a wall. It responded with a vibration. That shouldn't be possible, she whispered. These systems haven't had power in decades. They regrouped at the central hub. No sign of the boy. But something else caught their attention. A handprint. Small. Pressed into a steel bulkhead. Not drawn. Burned. Relic stared at it. That's not a survivor. That's a remnant. And somewhere down the hall, they all heard the same whisper. Low humming, a lullaby in a dead language. Zern turned slowly. Guys, the teddy bear. It's gone. A final flicker of motion caught Relic's eye. A shadow stepping into a hallway that hadn't existed 5 minutes ago. He raised his arm and signaled silently. Because now he knew two things with absolute certainty. 1, they hadn't found a child. 2, they were no longer the hunters in these ruins. They were being followed. Studied. Chosen. And not all of them were getting out. The silence grew heavier the deeper they went. Relic led them down a rusted stairwell that shouldn't have still been intact, each step groaning like it was warning them. The deeper levels weren't mapped. They weren't meant to exist anymore. But the hallway they saw the child vanish into didn't care about schematics. It opened for them like it was waiting, a narrow corridor lined with melted metal and what looked disturbingly like claw marks. Not human. Not alien. Just wrong. Zern walked with his rifle low, constantly glancing over his shoulder like he expected someone to tap it. His breathing was loud in the comms channel, shaky and uneven. Kelvik had stopped making jokes, which was a sign in itself. Rekka kept checking her biosigns monitor, frowning more with each glance. The readings weren't wrong, just contradictory. According to the system, they were all asleep. They passed what used to be an elevator shaft. Something had torn straight down it, leaving a blackened trail. No signs of explosive residue. No shrapnel. Just scorched metal curling outward like it was screaming. Relic paused and turned to the group. We pull back now, or we lose control. Something down here doesn't want us up there. And I need a clean evac strategy. Rekka nodded, clearly relieved. Kelvik motioned to spin around, but Zern didn't move. He was staring down a side passage to the left. At the end stood the boy. Just standing there. The same filthy clothes. The same missing shoe. No injuries. No blinking. He raised one hand and pointed deeper into the hallway behind him. Then he stepped backward into the dark. Zern moved before anyone could stop him. Wait! He shouted, sprinting down the hall. Relic cursed and signaled pursuit, but the passage Zern entered collapsed seconds later. The wall came down like a closing door, no explosion, no warning. Just silence. They reached it too late. Nothing but solid debris and one small handprint in the dust. This one was pressed into the wall as if someone had calmly leaned into it before vanishing. Relic slammed his fist into the steel. Zern! He called, but the echo came back too quickly, too sharp. Not a natural bounce. Almost like something was mimicking his voice. Kelvik shook his head slowly. That's not a wall. It's a test. Rekka began scanning the structure for alternate routes, but her system glitched violently. Static scrolled across her HUD, followed by a word. Just one word. Home. She ripped off her helmet, her face pale, sweat pouring down despite the cold. That's not code, she whispered. That's handwriting. Someone wrote that inside my system. Relic opened his own visor and looked down the corridor. We're leaving. Now. Find a path up. We regroup and call this whole op compromised. They turned to retrace their steps, only to find the corridor behind them gone. Not blocked. Gone. Smooth wall where the stairs had been. Like the ruin had swallowed its own tail. Rekka backed away in disbelief. This is impossible. There's no structural tech left on this planet capable of. The hallway lights flickered. A faint hum returned. The same melody. The same tune the child had hummed in the footage back in Chapter 1. Kelvik reached for his weapon, but it jammed. The safety light blinked red and then green and then purple. That wasn't a color code. That wasn't a weapon anymore. Relic steadied his breath. We find Zern. That's priority 1. This thing wants us to see something, and we're already too far down to walk away clean. They moved through the hallways in silence, broken only by the occasional metallic creak and a faint scraping sound from behind the walls. The deeper they got, the more they saw things that didn't belong. Children's drawings. Stick figures scratched into the walls. Simple games carved into the floor. All ancient. All recent. Some showed starships. Others showed alien soldiers. Some showed stick figures melting. One showed a teddy bear holding hands with a black shadow. Then they found a room with the door half open. Inside were 3 chairs. One broken. One empty. One spinning slowly in place. In the center of the room, on a table that was somehow still clean, sat the teddy bear. Still missing one eye. Still covered in dust. But it looked placed. Deliberate. Like bait. Rekka stepped forward first. The others waited, watching every angle. She reached the table and paused. There's something under it. She leaned down and came back up holding a cracked photo frame. Inside was a picture of a young boy with a woman, maybe his mother. She was smiling. The boy looked the same as the one in the ruins. But the date stamped in the corner read 26 years into Earth's future. A date that should not exist. Relic took the photo and flipped it over. There were words scrawled on the back. Don't lie to him. He remembers everything. They heard something move in the hallway. Footsteps, fast and light. Too light to be adult. Kelvik readied his stance. If it's the boy, we don't follow this time. We make him come to us. The lights in the room suddenly dimmed. Not faded. Dimmed like something was swallowing the electricity. The hallway outside flashed once. Then again. With each flicker, a shadow moved closer. Same size. Same shape. Relic held position. The flickering stopped. The child stood in the doorway. He looked straight at Kelvik. You don't remember me, he said softly. But I remember what you did. Kelvik's eyes widened. I've never seen this place in my life. The child stepped into the room. You lied to me then too. Before anyone could react, the door slammed shut behind him. Every system in the room surged offline. For 1 full minute, the squad was locked in complete darkness. When the emergency backup lights flickered on, the boy was gone again. So was the photo. The only thing remaining was the teddy bear. Now upright. Now staring at the door. Its single glass eye glowing faint red. Kelvik's vitals began to spike. His eyes twitched. Relic grabbed him. Snap out of it! But Kelvik's voice had changed. He's still here. He never left. And neither did we. We've been walking in this ruin since the day we were born. We just forgot. Rekka pulled a shock syringe and jabbed Kelvik, knocking him unconscious. The commander pulled his squad into a tight triangle and issued one final command. We find Zern. We find the source. Or we die trying. No more illusions. No more guesses. We treat this ruin like a living thing. Because whatever's controlling it doesn't want us to walk out sane. And from deep within the ruin, they heard it again. The hum. The lullaby. The child's voice layered under it like a whisper carried through the bones of the planet itself. Only this time, it was louder. And this time, it said their names. one by one. Slowly. Carefully. As if choosing. They moved without speaking now. Words felt pointless, even dangerous. Relic led with the steadiness of someone who had stopped trying to understand and had begun simply surviving. Rekka stayed close behind, constantly checking her biomonitor, even though it no longer responded. The screen still lit up, still blinked, but none of the data made sense. It listed atmospheric pressure as both normal and hostile, temperature as both hot and sub-zero, and each soldier's life sign as simultaneously stable and terminated. She had stopped reporting the errors because no one had the energy to pretend anymore. Kelvik walked in silence, his earlier trance now dulled into a hollow look that never quite left the floor. His body moved, but something deeper had stayed behind with the boy. The hallway turned from rusted metal to something cleaner, smoother, like it had been reconstructed recently. There were lights in the ceiling, but no source of power. They glowed a faint white, enough to reveal more symbols on the walls. Not graffiti this time. These were etched with something sharp, burned into the alloy like a language trying to crawl out from inside the material. Some of the symbols pulsed slowly when they passed. Others flickered in and out as if reacting to memory. Relic finally raised a hand and stopped them. At the end of the hallway stood a door, massive and curved inward slightly, as if waiting to breathe. There was no handle, no panel, no mechanism they could see. But the moment they stopped, it opened. Not with a hiss or mechanical grind, but with absolute silence, like it had never been closed. Behind it was a chamber none of them had expected. It was a nursery. That was the only word Relic could think of. The walls were covered in children's murals, painted with human hands. Pictures of fields, suns with smiling faces, animals that hadn't existed since the collapse. Toys were scattered across the floor, untouched by time. A crib sat against the far wall, far too small for the boy they'd seen, but pristine. The air in the room was warm. Real warmth. The kind you felt in your bones. Rekka whispered, almost choking on the words. "Why is this here?" No one answered. They moved forward slowly, eyes wide, weapons half raised out of habit. The lights overhead dimmed slightly, casting longer shadows across the room. Kelvik stepped toward the crib and peered inside. Empty. But lined with drawings. Hundreds of them, all layered over one another, each showing the same child in a different pose. Some smiling. Some crying. Some with eyes blacked out. One showed the child pointing at the viewer with blood pouring from his hands. Relic moved to the side of the room and found a console embedded in the wall. Old Earth tech. Human interface. He touched the screen. It lit up with a static burst and began playing footage. The room filled with the sound of a child crying. Then screaming. Then silence. The video showed a laboratory, clean, clinical, cold. Scientists in suits stood around a small table. On it lay the boy. Strapped down. Electrodes on his scalp. Tubes in his arms. They were speaking in code, military tone. Something about exposure thresholds, psychic resistance, and containment leaks. Then it happened. The screen jumped. An alarm sounded. The lights in the video flickered just like the ones in the ruin had. One scientist collapsed. Another clawed at his own head before vomiting black fluid. The boy on the table never moved. But his eyes glowed. Not like a flashlight. Like a reflection of something burning inside him. Rekka stepped back, face pale. "He's not just a child. He never was." The footage continued. Date stamps scrolled across the corner of the screen. The years didn't make sense. Some were in the past. Others in the future. Some repeated. The camera showed the boy growing older, then younger again, like time didn't apply to him. One frame showed him standing over the ruins of a city, completely alone, while black smoke formed faces behind him. Another frame cut in with no sound, just a close-up of the boy whispering to the lens. His lips said one word. Relic. The screen shut off. Kelvik turned away, breathing fast. "We have to destroy this place. Right now. We call an orbital fire and wipe it clean." Relic shook his head. "We can't. Not yet. There's more. Something deeper. This isn't just memory. It's design. We're here because someone wanted us to see this. A new door slid open across the room. Behind it was darkness. And inside the darkness, the faint glow of a green exit sign. Earth Standard. They entered slowly, and the world changed again. The hallway they stepped into was no longer alien or metallic. It was concrete. Human-built. Cold and damp. Old posters clung to the walls with half-peeled slogans about safety protocols and silence during testing. The corridor ended in another room, this one circular and lined with mirrors. Relic paused. His reflection looked normal. Then it blinked. But he hadn't. One by one, they stepped inside. The room locked behind them. Each mirror showed something different. Not reflections. Realities. Relic saw himself as a child, crying alone in a facility room. Kelvik saw himself strangling someone in a dark corridor. Rekka saw herself floating through space, alone, her eyes white. Then the lights flickered. The boy appeared in each mirror. Not as himself, but as shadows stitched to their own forms, mimicking their movements, wearing their shapes like costumes. Relic stepped forward and reached toward his reflection. His hand passed through the glass. The mirror rippled like water. He pulled back immediately, but the shadow version of himself smiled. Then spoke. You left us here. Kelvik backed into a corner, trembling. This is a mind trap. A psychic projection. He's inside us. Rekka clutched her helmet. No. He's not inside us. We're inside him. The room began to spin. Not physically, but perceptually. The mirrors blurred. The walls pulsed. The floor disappeared for a second and returned. They collapsed together in the center of the room, breathing hard. When the light steadied, only Relic was conscious. The others lay still, uninjured but completely unresponsive. The boy stood in the doorway, arms crossed, looking down at him. You saw what they did to me, he said. And you still don't understand. I'm not angry. I just don't want to be alone. Relic sat up slowly. What do you want? The boy smiled again. To come home. The room melted. The mirrors turned into windows. Each one showed a different star system, a different ship, a different squad, all searching, all lost. The boy stepped closer and whispered, just before fading. You're not the first. You won't be the last. And then the chamber went dark, and the only sound left was a single, echoing heartbeat that did not belong to Relic. The first thing Relic noticed when he opened his eyes was the sky. He didn't remember getting outside. He didn't remember climbing, escaping, or even walking. He was just there now, sprawled across cracked concrete surrounded by blackened soil and the charred skeletons of trees. The sky above was the same dull gray he had seen when they first arrived, but something about it felt wrong, like it was stretched too tight across the world. He sat up slowly, his muscles stiff but functioning. The helmet was gone. His suit was scorched, cut in places he couldn't explain. There was no sign of Rekka. No sign of Kelvik. No wreckage. No weapons. No equipment. Just silence. And the wind. He stood, swaying slightly, then began walking. The ruins around him were quiet again, like they had reset. The humming was gone. The flickering lights gone. Even the soot had settled. Every building stood like a tombstone. No boy. No shadows. No mirrors. Just a scorched field of memories that felt like they belonged to someone else now. After some time, he reached the edge of the drop site where their patrol craft had first landed. It was no longer there. Not destroyed. Not burned. Just absent. As if it had never existed at all. He walked to where he remembered placing the portable beacon and found something in its place. A teddy bear. One eye missing. Clean. Untouched by ash. As if it had just been placed there moments ago. He didn't touch it. He didn't need to. It was enough to know it was watching him. Relic scanned the horizon and spotted something in the distance. Movement. A shimmer. He started walking toward it, unsure if it was hope or just hallucination. As he moved, his comm unit crackled once. A burst of static, then silence. He stopped, adjusted the settings manually, and tried to transmit. No channel. No reception. But then it came again, not as sound but as words directly in his head, like a memory. Tell them. Tell them I'm still here. He froze, his hands trembling. It wasn't a command. It wasn't even a plea. It was a statement. I'm still here. Like a presence that could not be erased. He continued moving until the shimmer became a shape, then a vehicle. A search drone, its reflective wings glinting faintly under the clouds. The moment it spotted him, it shifted direction and descended. Seconds later, a retrieval ship followed behind, slowly gliding into view from the clouds. He dropped to his knees as it landed. 4 armored figures stepped out. He didn't recognize any of them. Their suits were newer. Cleaner. Their insignias updated. One of them raised a scanner toward him. Relic didn't move. He just whispered, "I'm the only one left." The figures exchanged glances, then motioned for him to stand. They led him into the vessel without question. Inside, the lights were bright, too bright, and the silence too sterile. They sat him down in a containment seat and sealed him in. The ship lifted without a word. No interrogation. No medical check. Just silence. The figure across from him eventually removed her helmet. She was human. Or at least shaped like one. Cold eyes. No expression. She studied him with professional detachment, and finally spoke. "Commander Relic. Your mission ended 7 standard hours ago. We've been searching since you failed to report." He blinked. 7 hours. It had felt like days. Weeks. Years. She continued. "Your patrol record is incomplete. No audio, no video, no life signs logged past initial contact. What happened in there?" He stared at her, unsure where to begin. He tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. He forced them out anyway. "There was a child. Human. Or something that used to be. We followed him into the ruins. Then things changed. People vanished. Rooms that didn't exist. Memories that weren't mine. A nursery that shouldn't have been there. He was everywhere and nowhere. And then the mirrors. Then the heartbeat." She didn't blink. She just nodded and tapped her pad. "Symptoms consistent with prior echo field exposure cases. Psychogenic hallucination. Spatial disorientation. Trauma-induced memory fragmentation." He leaned forward. "No. You don't understand. This wasn't trauma. This wasn't psychological breakdown. He was real. He knew my name. He showed me things no one else could know. He said we weren't the first. And we wouldn't be the last." She tapped again. "Echo transmission ends in repeat pattern logic. Nonlinear cognition often results in subject imprinting external events as internal memory. None of this is unique." He looked at her closely now. "You've seen this before." Her eyes flicked for just a moment. "I've seen the aftermath." He leaned back in the seat, the fire draining from him. "What is he?" She paused, then spoke softly. "He is what happens when war forgets to bury its consequences. He was born in the ruins of guilt and gifted everything we couldn't control. And now he waits. For us. For anyone. For someone to understand." Relic whispered. "He doesn't want revenge." She nodded. "No. He wants company." The ship docked with the orbital station. As they disembarked, Relic looked back at the planet through the small window port. It looked quiet. Dead. Unchanged. Like nothing had ever happened. But he knew the truth. The ruins were alive. Watching. Listening. They processed him quickly. Blood scans. Neural checks. Psychological evaluation. They asked questions with no real interest in the answers. At the end of it all, they handed him a discharge packet. No medal. No commendation. No press. Just a quiet transfer to civilian status and a politely worded order to keep silent. The last file handed to him was marked Echo Terminated. He didn't open it. He didn't need to. He knew it was a lie. Back on his homeworld, far from the broken cities and gray skies of Earth, he lived alone. No contact. No visitors. Just silence. Some nights he would wake up to the sound of humming. Not loud. Not frightening. Just familiar. A lullaby. A memory that had no beginning. He never told anyone. He didn't need to. One night, weeks after the last recorded dream, he walked into the bathroom and saw it. A handprint. Small. On the mirror. And not his own. He stood there, frozen, breath shallow. Then slowly, behind him, a soft voice whispered from the empty room. I remember you. He didn't turn around. He just nodded once. The light above him flickered. And the reflection in the mirror blinked. But he didn't. The government labeled it stress-induced psychosis. That was the official stamp across every file, every report, every whispered conversation he was never supposed to hear. The analysts didn't care what he'd seen. The debrief team dismissed most of his mission as hallucination, likely triggered by neuroradiation, isolation trauma, or psychic bleed from remnants of illegal Earth-era weaponry. They had answers for everything. Everything except the fact that he was the only one who came back, and even that was treated more like an inconvenience than a mystery. Commander Relic had been scrubbed clean, reassigned to a distant civilian zone, given a name that didn't belong to him, and buried under paperwork that made sure no one ever asked why. He hadn't spoken since they released him. Not because he was afraid, but because there was no one left who would believe him. He lived alone in a small unit on the outer colonies. No neighbors, no command alerts, no surveillance, at least, none he hadn't already disabled. The place was quiet. Too quiet for someone who had spent decades of his life surrounded by noise, orders, conflict. But Relic never complained. He didn't miss the mission. He didn't miss the uniform. He didn't even miss the squad. What haunted him wasn't absence. It was memory. The kind that didn't fade with time. The kind that waited in corners, behind doors, beneath your skin. He hadn't seen the boy again since the mirror incident. But that didn't mean the boy was gone. He had just changed tactics. It started small. The humming would return at night. That same lullaby that didn't exist in any human database. No composer, no lyrics, just a melody tied to dust and flickering light. Then came the footsteps. Not outside. Inside. As if someone was walking barefoot across his floors, one slow step at a time. Every time he checked, the house was empty. Every sensor silent. But the air felt heavier. Like it was trying to remember something. Sometimes the lights would flicker. Not glitch. Not surge. Flicker, like a breath caught in the walls. And once, just once, he woke up to find his own reflection already looking at him before he'd even opened his eyes. He began recording everything. Not for others, but for himself. To track the line between reality and delusion. He used old analog gear, not networked. It helped him trust what he saw. But the tapes never played back right. They distorted, looped, jumped in time. One night he recorded 8 hours of sleep, only to play it back and hear nothing but that same lullaby playing on a loop over static. Another tape showed a frame-by-frame sequence of him sitting on the floor talking to no one, except he remembered sleeping. The tapes weren't for proof anymore. They were warnings. Reminders. He was never truly alone. Then came the call. Not a message. Not a knock. Just a voice on the line of a comm unit that hadn't been active in months. It spoke one sentence. You left him behind. Then silence. He tried to trace it. No signal. No origin. The unit wasn't even powered on. He disconnected the power entirely. The next night, it rang again. Same sentence. He stopped answering. But the voice didn't stop. It moved. Into the walls. Into the mirrors. Into his head. Never shouting. Always soft. like a lullaby wrapped in guilt. Relic started noticing patterns in the dates. Every incident, every whisper, every flicker happened on the anniversary of the mission. Not Earth standard, but the time inside the ruin. The time that didn't exist anymore. He marked the wall each year. 5 so far. Every mark looked older than it should have. Like it had been there for decades. Like someone else had carved it. On the 6th year, the mirror cracked without reason. On the 7th, he found the teddy bear at his doorstep, clean, with both eyes this time. He didn't throw it away. He placed it on the shelf, right where he could see it from the bed. He stopped pretending the boy was gone. He accepted it. The boy had followed him out. Maybe not physically. Maybe not with footsteps or breath. But memory is more powerful than presence. The boy had been built in pain, shaped in silence, and left to rot under a world that was supposed to be empty. Relic had seen the nursery, the tests, the rooms with no exits. He understood now. The boy wasn't a child. He was a system. A remnant. A whisper that refused to end. On the 8th year, Relic woke up in a place that wasn't his house. The room looked familiar, but wrong. The walls were too clean. The windows showed a skyline that hadn't existed in a century. He stood slowly and opened the door. A hallway stretched out before him. Concrete. Old. Human-made. And at the end, a single light. Green. Exit. He walked. Each step echoed louder than it should have. His reflection in the polished floor looked older than he remembered. At the end of the hallway, someone was waiting. The boy. Same face. Same torn clothes. Same expression. "You're ready now," the boy said. Relic didn't respond. He just nodded. The boy smiled and turned. The hallway folded inward. The light faded. Relic followed him into the dark. The next morning, the neighbors, what few there were, found his house empty. The door locked. The systems untouched. No signs of struggle. Just one small teddy bear sitting on the windowsill, staring out across the stars. The report was filed and buried. Another missing veteran. Another closed case. No one asked questions. No one remembered his name. But deep in the databanks of the Exploration Corps, under restricted files no one accessed anymore, a recording still existed. A message from long ago. It played only one line before corrupting itself beyond recovery. He followed the boy home. And somewhere out there, on a planet officially marked uninhabitable, a new patrol was sent. Young, eager, unaware. Just another recon mission. Sector 9. Scans showed faint thermal activity. Possible anomaly. Command cleared them to land. As they stepped off the ship, one of the troopers laughed and pointed to something half buried in the dust. A teddy bear. One eye missing. Still smiling.